Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sustainability in the Sea, a podcast by ocean people for ocean people. I'm your host, Carissa Cabrera. This is produced and hosted by FutureSwell, my media community and consultancy that gets to help build ocean climate solutions. If you're new here, thank you for being here. Please follow the podcast wherever you're listening to today. It is really helpful for me to show partners that this is in demand and that we need accessible ocean conservation content on social media and also long form content on podcasts. So I know there's been a bit of a break, and I just want to thank you guys so much for your patience because it has been a very intense spring. And if you follow us on other channels, I'm sure you have noticed that as well. I work on ocean policy and climate policy as one of my projects, and the legislative session in Hawaii is from January to May, and this was the most intense legislative session ever. And it had an amazing outcome. We passed the nation's first climate visitor green fee, and Hawaii is the first state to do so in the U.S. And I'm going to do a full episode on that because you guys need to know about it. But the main update I have is that I'm actually not stepping away from that project. I'm staying with the coalition to continue on the implementation phase, which I'm learning very quickly is going to be harder than passing it in the first place. So that was going on. I also was focusing a lot on building this new arm of FutureSwell that we are planning to announce for this World Oceans Month. Please follow our channels at FutureSwell to stay in the know. And then lastly, I've been traveling around for work. I went to Capitol Hill Ocean Week in Washington, D.C. I stayed for the National Geographic Explorers Festival, and I went on a vacation with my best friends. And all that to be said, I'm really excited to be back, and I'm excited to be back regularly. These episodes will go back to going out bi-weekly, and you can subscribe to never miss an update when they're released. I'm going to try to do my best to get promos on social media so you're reminded, but we're all just trying our best here, aren't we? Okay, that being said, this episode specifically is going to focus on the outcomes and progress of the UN Ocean Conference that just finished last week in Nice, France. So if that's what you're looking for, I think regardless of whether you work in ocean conservation locally or nationally, this is really important to understand what's happening internationally. And there were some really big milestones, which is what inspired me to tell you guys all about it. So thanks for being here. Welcome back to Sustainability and the Sea. Okay, so what is the UN Ocean Conference? The UNOC or UNOC 3, is this the third one? The UN Ocean Conference is, of course, a conference put on by the United Nations. It actually only happens every 3 years, and the last one was in 2022. It is an international gathering to advance agreements, bring all of the right players into the right room to talk about progress made for the ocean. There are 3 main campaigns that are internationally participated by, and we're going to talk about all 3. High Seas Treaty, 30 by 30, and deep sea mining. There's also ocean finance and the plastics treaty, which I'll touch on, but we don't have updates for in this episode. But what you need to know about UNOC is that everyone is going to the same place. Around 50 heads of states came, and there were 100 representatives. And this year it was in Nice, France, which what a spot. Oh my God, I should have gone for real. But there's the similar to COP, if you followed COP for climate, there's the green zone and the blue zone. And the green zone is for the public. So anyone can celebrate. It's like an ocean festival on the ground. And the blue zone is where all of the events are. The UN also puts a call out for side events, and there were thousands of side events. I didn't go personally, but the coalition that I've recently brought together and am going to launch this month, we had about 8 people on the ground. So getting updates of what it was like on the ground was also exhausting, even just getting the update. So a little bit relieved that I invested more at home, but also just to know that our values as a community, as younger up and coming ocean conservationists that don't want to stick the status quo and want bold action, we're all represented there as advocates. So that being said, let's talk about deep sea mining first. Yeah. So one of the reasons I chose to stay home was because I was given the opportunity to go to Capitol Hill Ocean Week in Washington, D.C. and lobby against deep sea mining with congressional offices. If you haven't been updated, deep sea mining is an industry that hasn't begun yet officially. The International Seabed Authority is the international framework of like many countries that are determining the regulations. Last year, a new head of the ISA was elected. Her name's Leticia Carvalho. She's an oceanographer from Brazil. And since then, there's been more of a conversation during ISA meetings about taking a pause, waiting till we know more, being precautionary and protecting the seabed, especially understanding that there are so many destructive considerations to think about, whether it be environmental or cultural or just the fact that this doesn't even make financial sense. Well, in March, during our little hiatus of sustainability in the sea, President Trump released an executive order to fast track the deep sea mining industry in the U.S. This is he wants to fast track it in national waters, and he wants to fast track it in international waters and go around the ISA framework. So the first one, national waters, that's not really happened before. There was a journalist, Claire, she's a friend, she did a piece that it did happen before on the Blake Plateau in the Southeast. And guess what her investigative journalism found? That you could go back, you went back 50 years later after deep sea mining happened on the seafloor, and it looks like not a day has passed since it occurred. That's how slow things work in the deep sea. So there's a national push, and the metals company is really loving that. Of course, the metals company and President Trump, besties. And then there's the international push. The main thing I wanted to focus around in my meetings is how his international push to step around the multilateral framework of the International Seabed Authority is a huge threat to our geopolitical safety. So if all these countries are coming together every 6 months in Kingston, Jamaica, and trying to make progress and find agreement and determine a regulatory framework for seabed mining, and Trump is just like, I'm going to ignore all of you guys. We're going to do this anyway. That is tea. That's tea in the ocean world. It's also giving dictator, but he's always giving dictator. So anyway, the point is there was he ruffled a lot of feathers when that came out. And a result of those ruffled feathers is that the countries within the ISA, including countries like China, are like, we honor this framework. We honor our neighbors. We honor the intention of the ISA to bring us together, and we will respect these types of gatherings. And 4 more countries announced at the UN Ocean Conference to call for a moratorium or a pause on deep sea mining. It was, let me get it up. It was the Marshall Islands, of course, the Pacific's gonna Pacific, Slovenia, Latvia, and who am I missing? Cyprus. So that brings us totally to 37 countries that have called for a pause. And I truly do believe that there is a steady wave of resistance to the industry going on globally. And we just need to zoom out and understand that the global community agrees that deep sea mining is a halt. Okay, that's what happened with deep sea mining. There was also this incredible event with Uncle Sol and Sister Fire from Aotearoa and all of the young ocean advocates and all of the big players in deep sea mining who gathered and talked really honestly about what the movement against deep sea mining looks like globally and what they need. A lot of our friends in the FutureSwell network were there, and it was really progressive, is what I heard. So that's where we're at with deep sea mining. President Trump might be, of course, the first country to potentially start this, but the international community is mobilizing, organizing, and resisting, and that gives me hope. Okay, the next is, let's talk about the High Seas Treaty. So the High Seas Treaty treaties are essentially internationally binding agreements. Countries sign on to them. They do the things. Also, I'm sorry if I have a little bit of stuffiness. Of course, I traveled for 4 weeks. My body, I got home and my body was like, you really need to rest. Love it when I'm just told by my body. Okay, so the High Seas Treaty is essentially an international binding agreement. COPs, I think when we think of COPs, we think of the climate COPs, but COPs just stands for Conference of Parties. And when there are treaties, people gotta meet at either annually, biannually. They gotta meet to talk about the treaty, to find their agreements, to progress on the issue that the treaty signed around. Okay, so the Paris Agreement was a treaty. The Paris Agreement triggered annual climate COPs to make progress on the issue that was signed to care about in the Paris Agreement, aka climate disasters, the climate emergency. Excuse me, the climate crisis. Okay, so this is a new emerging treaty. It's not new. It's been at it for 12 years. But in order to reach like global consensus that those COPs and conferences to meet about this issue matter, you have to have 60 countries ratify the treaty. Okay, so we ended the UN Ocean Conference last week with 50 ratifying the treaty. Okay, that was 18. We got 18 last week. 18 ratifications were deposited, which means that we are only short 10 countries before the High Seas Treaty comes into effect. Okay, let me just backtrack for a second. Why the heck does the High Seas Treaty matter? Okay, let me tell you. And I care a lot about the ocean, but the High Seas Treaty is the most exciting international campaign that I am part of. And let me just tell you why. So obviously, you guys know we got to protect the ocean, right? There's MPAs as the vector to get to it. We're going to talk about 30 by 30 next. It's the third campaign, right? But nations only have jurisdiction over the waters that are 200 miles offshore of their land mass. That's not that much of the ocean. The ocean covers 70% of the planet, but the high seas, which are also referred to as BB&J, biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, is everything beyond that 200-mile EEZ distance from landmass. And those waters are international waters. They are the open ocean. They are the high seas. And they don't belong to any country. Okay? And that is really important for you to understand, because when they don't belong to any country, countries can't make decisions about what is going to happen with those waters, of course. And that area of our planet, the high seas, the open ocean, the BB&J, that makes up 2/3 of our ocean and 50% of planet Earth. You guys, I always say this is planet ocean. Well, it's really planet high seas, okay? 50% of the earth is complete. We have 50% of the earth we have no mechanism to protect. The High Seas Treaty is that mechanism. Okay? Does that make sense? So once the 60 countries ratify the treaty, we can start meeting and talking about how to develop open ocean high seas protections, transnational marine protected areas, okay? Multiple countries coming together. And the biggest, it's so exciting. It's so good. It's so exciting, you know? I don't know, like it's exciting. And to just give you a little bit of more excitement is that the High Seas Alliance is the essentially coalition that has been tracking all of this, leading, advocating. This is their highest priority. You can go on their website, and it's called Race to Ratification. Let's see who's signed on to ratify. Let's see who's already ratified. And there's way more than 10 countries that have signed on to ratify. We just need them to officially ratify using whatever mechanism they have to use to ratify within their nation or state by the end of the year. And if we do that, so by January 2026, if we do that, which I think we're going to do that, guys, but how would I know? I wasn't even on the ground. But what the point is, if we do that, the first COP for the ocean will be next year. Okay, party at the first COP for the ocean, for real. You're invited, I'm invited, let's all go. I wonder where they're going to put it. Hopefully Palau, because they're the biggest leader on all of these issues. So, okay, anyway, what you need to understand is that it's not just me who thinks that this is happening by the end of the year. There was already a transnational MPA introduced at UNOC last year, and they said, this could be the first one, all right? They're like, if we do this, we are already anticipating doing it. This is what I think we're going to do. And I believe it was between, I don't want to misspeak, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Ecuador, the first transnational MPA. So that's amazing. And just really quickly before we go on to 30 by 30, I just want to say that there are wildlife refuges in Africa that have really created these reserves that bring back biodiversity. And it marked like a really big shift from killing those animals to now creating a tourism economy where people want to go on safari and see them. And these parks, I had a friend, Haley, she's actually been on the podcast, Haley Campbell, talked to me about how these are peace parks. And these parks go across different African countries, and they have created bridges between the countries to work together on a shared issue, whether it be the game reserve or whether it be building relations through the park and then working together on other issues. High seas MPAs are a mechanism to do that. Obviously, Colombia, Costa Rica, and Ecuador are probably partying and already besties. Maybe, I don't know. But them working together on a transnational MPA is strengthening international relations, okay? And we're going to need that, okay? All right, that's a high seas treaty. Also, you guys, let me know if you have questions about this. I know my audience on this podcast ranges from really young to early career to mid-career. So if you have questions, just let me know. You can DM us on Sustainability in the Sea. You can DM me. It'll take me 4 months to reply. Okay. 30 by 30, baby, which really bleeds into the High Seas Treaty. But really quickly before that, I posted this on the FutureSwell Instagram, but there was this this little group of leaders that came out of UNOC that said, we are the ocean pioneers, okay? And it's 20 countries. And they said, in order to be an ocean pioneer, you have to have already ratified the High Seas Treaty and called for a deep sea mining moratorium. And you can only get in the club if you've done both those things. And these ocean pioneers are essentially building this group so that they can go to other countries and encourage them to be a little more ambitious and say, we're the leaders. Don't you want to lead with us? We're the first movers. Let's be the first movers together. Come be the first movers. And I like that. I like that they're like, we're gonna inspire others. And the only way you're in the club is if you did these two things for the ocean. I think that that's cool. It really be like high school in the international ocean governance world. Like, they formed a club. It's called the Ocean Pioneers. Okay. All right. Anyway, I hope that this is making it all a little bit less daunting. Sometimes people are like, international campaigns, ocean governance, what's going on? It's really just these 3 issues. For real. Okay. So then we're going to talk about 30 by 30. So going in to UNOC, 8.4% of the ocean was protected. You guys may have known that we need to protect, quote, 30% of the ocean by 2030. That's like the goal. Ooh, a little rain moment. It's raining outside. I wonder if we'll get a little background. Oh, it's pouring. Okay. It's calming. It's giving meditation. It's fine. We're going to keep going. So, we're trying to get to 30% of the ocean by 2030. Globally, there's no way we're getting that without the High Seas Treaty, of course, which is why there's such a push to have the 60 ratifications by 2026 so that we have 4 years to establish open ocean MPAs that will get us to 30% globally. Now, within the EEZs, the 200 nautical miles of each nation, that's different. Who's created, who's at 30, who's not, whatever. So, but going into this conference, 8.4% of the global ocean was protected, okay? But there's, what's protected, right? Like, for example, in the European Union, there's a lot of paper protections, but they allow bottom trawling in it. Okay, that should not be allowed. But I don't know. This is my subtle plug to go watch Oceans by David Attenborough. It was released on Disney and Hulu on June 8th. And they released the first ever footage of what bottom trawling looks like from the seafloor. And they showed it at UNOC. It was part of a really huge campaign that they called Revive the Ocean. And they put a lot of public pressure on the European Union to stop bottom trawling at MPAs. And actually one of the outcomes of UNOC was that they committed to not allowing bottom trawling in at least 41 EU MPAs, which might seem like a lot, but it was, the international community was not stoked on that outcome. It wasn't that much. Actually, I have it right here. The French government specifically committed to reach 4% strong protection by 2026. So there's protected areas, and then there's strong protected areas. So the Marine Protection Atlas, which is a really amazing tool, you can go online to mpaatlas.org and you can see all the protections and all the MPAs. Even though 8.4% of the ocean is protected, I think it's only 2 or 3% are strongly protected. So effectively protected. So anyway, there's this whole other conversation we have to have that we're not having on this episode about, well, is your MPA strong? Are people enforcing it? How do we strengthen MPAs, right? So anyway, that doesn't matter. The point is that we reached 10%. We went from 8.4% of the ocean being protected to 10% of the global ocean being protected as of the announcements from Nice, France at UNOC last week, okay? And I just need to be really excited about that for a second because there were some really big MPAs that were announced, okay? The first is that French Polynesia just blew it out of the water. We're going to start big. They said, we're protecting 100% of our EEZ. They said, oh, you want to protect 10%? Oh, you want to protect 100, all of it. We're protecting all of it, okay? And that encompasses almost 1 million square kilometers of ocean. French Polynesia also has the largest shark sanctuary in the world. And I just want to say that I might be a little bit biased, but all the ocean leaders should be coming out of the Pacific. Okay, that's what's going on here. So 1 million square kilometers, 100% EEZ, okay? That is going to be the largest protected area in the world. Right now, the largest protected area in the world is Papahanaumokuakea, which just celebrated its 19th birthday of being protected. Okay, Samoa. Just to clarify, American Samoa is a territory of the U.S. Samoa is sovereign, and they are thriving. So Samoa announced that they are going to protect 100% or manage 100% of their waters, with 30% being no take. So 30% being 100% protected and 70% being managed. Okay, sounds great. Also, I did a roundup of this on social media, so sorry if it's a little redundant. Then Chile is expanding their Juan Fernandez archipelago. Those of you who've been with me for a long time know that I actually lived in the Juan Fernandez archipelago for 8 weeks in 2022 with a program called Work for Humankind. And to say that was a life-changing experience, I think that was before we started the podcast, so I don't know if I talked about it. I should probably just reflect on it. To say that was a life-changing experience was an understatement of my life. I lived on Robinson Crusoe with 800 people who live there year-round, and we were supposed to go there to be helpful around our issue area that we're experts in, but I ended up just absorbing everything that they said because they have some of the strongest community-based ocean conservation leadership that I have ever experienced firsthand. They pretty much just self-govern their ocean, and then the country of Chile is like, okay, we'll formalize this, but they like have been governing themselves for so long. So they officially announced they're expanding the MPAs in Juan Fernandez archipelago, which Robinson Crusoe was in that archipelago. But they've been working for that for years. They were talking to me 3 years ago about the additional protections they're adding and things like that. So now it's just official, and I'm really proud of them, and I'm really happy for them because they've really been working for that for years. And Portugal announced that they're protecting the Azores Islands, which they have jurisdiction over. And that's actually going to be the largest MPA in the North Atlantic, which is pretty crazy. I've always wanted to go to the Azores. I've always seen like TikToks that are like, it's the Hawaii of the Atlantic. And I'm like, is it though? But it might be. I think it's a volcanic island. So yeah. Okay. And then Colombia's MPAs are actually like they already reached 30% of their EEZ being protected. So these MPAs are just cherries on top, which I thought was really cool. Like they're saying, you know, you guys say 30. Well, we know we need more. So and then the main thing I want to tell you is that a collaborative MPA was announced by Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands. That's also going to hit New Caledonia and Papua New Guinea's waters a little bit. And that's going to be what they're calling the Melanesia Ocean Reserve. And it's really an important precedent to set that they're already working with other countries. This is different than like the transnational ones, right? This is like the EEZs overlap a lot in the Pacific because of the way that the islands cluster. And so it's going to touch all of these EEZs. And I thought that that was really cool to hear. So yeah, we hit 10% of 30 by 30. I will say, just as we look to the next 5 years, you know, in the US, Trump's getting out of office in 2029 at the earliest. We're probably not hitting in the US, but we might hit it internationally. And there's a lot of hope in that. And if you're at home here in the US, you should probably join our coalitions to defend these monuments and sanctuaries. And if you are tuning in from another country, I would plug into what MPAs are in your backyard. You could use the MPA Atlas tool. UNOC was an incredible gathering that really helped turn the tide and remind me personally that there's a whole movement underpinning this work, and that one country's failure to lead is not going to cause the world to fail. And this man is not that powerful. And this UNOC really reminded me of that. Especially because I think my last episode on this podcast was like essentially a resistance toolkit for you guys. So I'm happy to come back with good news. Okay, I think that's it for this episode. The last thing I want to share is that the other two issues were ocean finance. We don't have enough money to meet any of these solutions, which makes sense. I don't know enough about that. Might need to bring Bodhi on for that again. And then the plastics treaty, which is, of course, so crucial. And there's already plastics treaties negotiations happening outside of gatherings like UNOC. So keep in mind with those, there's already large campaigns, petitions to sign on that you can follow FutureSwell to stay in the know on. We're always going to stay activated on these global campaigns because they remind us that we're part of a collective, and the ocean literally doesn't understand borders or nations. And we need to be thinking more like that. So, okay, I love you guys. I'm so happy to be back. We are so back. We are back. We are back. Okay, bye.